We're learning now in Mishnah Ches in Perek Daled in Bava Kama, and we're learning Mishnah Ches in Bava Kama, and we're learning it Leilu Nishmas Levi Yitzchok ben Reb Chaim Tzvi to benefit his soul. Tehei Nishmos Yitzrura B'Tzrira Chaim. Zog the Mishnah Ches. Shoir Shehu Yotze Lehisokel. So an ox, he killed a person, and we said before that an ox that gores a person would be stoned. So the person thinks to himself, might as well consecrate and not going to benefit from the ox. Let me make it hegdish. Let it be tzedakah, a gift to hegdish. So the din is that if it's going out to be stoned, v'higdishoy ba'olov, and its owners consecrated it, einoi mugdosh, that it's not become kodesh. It's not really his anymore, since it is osur b'hanoah, and once it's osur b'hanoah, he doesn't have the right to be magdish. And another thing is, the person thinks at least he can eat the meat later on because he'll shecht it. If they're going to stone the ox, so it's going to be useless. They're going to kill the ox. So he figures that he might shecht it first, so at least it'll be kosher, eat the meat. No, we say shchote basori osur. Even if he shechts it, the meat is prohibited. And Bartanura explains, shchote osur, osur ba'achila, it is prohibited to be eaten. Why? The Ksiv, the Pasik says, Ishmael Chof Aleph, Sokel Yisokel Hashoir, V'lo Yoichal as B'sorei. Torah says that the ox that killed a person needs to be stoned, and the Pasik says you're not going to eat, you're not allowed to eat the meat. Well, if you're going to stone him, so then the meat is going to be nevela. It wasn't shechted. Why does the pasuk have to say that you stone him and you don't eat the meat? If you stone him, you can't eat the meat automatically because it's not shechted. From the fact that it already says that this ox should be stoned, any Yadeshi nevela, don't I know that this will become a nevela, a carcass? It wasn't shechted. Unevela asura ba'achila, and it's also ba'achila. Why does the pasuk have to say lo yachol? Umat talmud lo yachol is b'sari. Why does the pasuk have to say not going to eat the meat? The pasuk is actually trying to tell you that if you caught before you stoned the animal, so before it becomes nevela and you shecht it, you still can't eat the meat. If you went quickly and you shechted it, after Bezdin completed the judgment and said that this ox is supposed to be stoned, skila, it's going to be too late and the asur, you can't shecht it. If you shecht it, it's still going to be asur. That's why the Torah says lo yochel, that there's no way to eat it, even if you're going to shecht it. Not because it's going to be nevela, you're going to be prohibited to eat it. However, this is only after Beis Din concluded his judgment. But v'im ad sheloi nigbar dina higdishu ba'olov. But if they consecrated it, Pesdin did not yet give out the final ruling that the ox should be stoned. So then we don't know that there's really a problem. We don't have it yet concluded the halacha. So therefore, higdishe ba'olov mugdash. So if the owners goes and makes it hagdish, so then it's kodesh, and then uh, what are you going to do with it? But he's still going to stone the ox. So what is it? What is the value that we're saying that it's kodesh? And the difference is because if somebody uses something of hegdish, then there's the din of meila over there. Meila means that there's a special halacha when you use hegdish. So the fact that we're saying that by consecrating it, he becomes Hegdesh, if it's before the Gemara Din, so that will allow for if a person should benefit from this animal, then he'll be mal. So then you have to pay a fifth, and there's the din of me'ilah. And the same thing is vim shechata, if you shechted it before the conclusion of the Beis Din that you're supposed to stone this ox, the din is that the meat is mutter because you haven't yet finalized the ruling, so we don't know yet that it's suckle yisakal. If you quickly went and shechted, so there's no more ox here, there's no more judgment here, and the meat would be permissible. Final Mishnah of the Perik Dalet, a Mishnah test. What happens if a person has an ox that gored? He he passes it, gives it over. He has to leave. He gives it l'shem rechinum to a watchman who watches for free, bilashoyel, or somebody who wants to borrow, l'noise sochar, to someone who collects money for watching it, or lasoicher, a renter who pays to use it. These are all the four different watchmen that are taking the other one's animal into their possession to either watch for free or for pay or to rent it or use it. But in all of these cases, they take over the responsibility. They go in instead of their owners, and they would have to pay whatever the owner had to pay because now they have to watch it. If the ox is a mued, mishalim nezik shalom, then he has to pay the shemachin, the shoyl, the nesach, the secher has to pay a full nezik, just like the owner. V'tam mishalem chatzi nezek. But if it's a tam, he'd only pay a half a nezek. Okay. Now the question is, there's different levels of watching. There is something which is called a shmira pechusa. It's a lower standard of guarding, which means ordinarily in a common wind, it's watched. But if there is a little bit of a storm, not a common wind, it's not watched. And what happens is he only locked it up in the lesser degree, and then the ox went out and gored. Is the person, the watchman, is he responsible? Zog the Mishnah, Kashore ba'olov b'ma seiro. They tied it by the rope of the animal, and v'noal b'fonov karoi, and he locked up in front of the animal properly. Properly means just properly, not very good, but enough. Karoi. Rashi says v'noal b'fonov karoi, which means b'derech sheyichoy lamed beruach mitzuya. It's a wind that could withstand a common wind. That's called a shmira pechusa. V'hainu shmira pechusa, that's a lower level of shmira. So in that case, v'yotza v'hizik. So it did go out. That wasn't apparently enough for the ox. He went out and he did damage v'hizik. So says the Mishnah, Chotam v'chad muad chayiv. It doesn't matter because you didn't watch it well, you didn't do a shmira mu'ula. If you're a tam, the shomer is going to have to pay half a nezek megufay. If it's a muad, he'll have to pay the whole amount. Chayiv. Divrei Rabbi Meir. That's the opinion of Rabbi Meir. So Rabbi Meir holds that watching it with a shmira pchusa isn't sufficient, and you're going to pay the full payment, whether it's a tam and a muad. Rabbi Yehuda disagrees. He says for a tam, for a muad, for full payment, you're not going to pay even though you did a shmira pchusa. For a smaller, for the tam, you are going to pay with a Shmira Pechusa. So Rabbi Yehuda is lenient. He says you're not going to pay the full payment as long as you watched it. Rabbi Yehuda Eimer, Tom Chayiv Umuad Potter. A Tam has to pay and a Muad is exempt. Muad Potter, Zokt Rashi, Zokt the Bartanura. When we say a Muad is Potter, we don't mean he's going to be Potter totally. He's going to have to pay that 50% that the Tam pays. We're saying by watching it, even with a Shmira Pechusa, you're not going to have to pay the full payment, only half a payment. In other words, full payment you only pay if it's a muad. Abel tzad tamus b'mekoymei amedus. The part of tam, the 50%, that you're going to have to pay because Rabbi Yehuda also agrees that with a shmira b'chusa you pay 50%. The tam, he only disagrees and he says the extra full payment you don't pay if you did a shmira b'chusa. Mashalom chatzi nezek itam, and therefore you'll pay a half a nezek just like itam. Because the kisiv, why does he make a distinction between the tam and the muad? And why does he say if it's shmira pechusa exempts you from a muad, why wouldn't it exempt you also from the tam, from the half a payment? Because he says the kisiv v'lo yishmerenu gabe muad. The Torah, when it talks about a muad that you have to pay the full amount, the Torah says you don't watch it, meaning at all. Hoshamre koldu, as long as you watched it somewhat, patur mitzad ha'ador, that part of the muad you don't have to pay. But there is no lo yishmerenu bayatam. So bayatam, because you didn't watch it a shmira me'ula, only a shmira pchusa, you're going to pay. But Rabbi Yehuda disagrees on a muad. The muad will only pay 50% because as long as you watched it a little bit, you don't pay the full payment. Shenemar, but lo yishmerenu ba'olov, it doesn't watch him at all. And this one is watched. Finally, the last sentence in the Mishnah, Rabbi Lezer Eimer, Ein Shmira ela sakin. He doesn't even agree. He says even a shmira mu'ula, which according to the Tanakama, the Meir, would be sufficient. Rabbi Lezer says no. If we're talking about a muad, the only thing is a knife can guard it, which means you got to shecht him, and then you know that he's not going to do damage. But there's no shmira me'ula, and you're always going to have to pay regardless. So the Bartanura sums up the Mishnah now. Rabbi Lezer Eimer Ein Lishmira Lemuud Elasakin, which means Achi Chateno. The only thing you can do is shecht it. B'sholish Machloikis Bedover, and there are three arguments in this matter. Rabbi Meir, according to Rabbi Meir, b'shmira pchusa chayiv. If you did a shmira pchusa, you'd be chayiv for a tam and a muad. Ubemula potter ganzen. Totally. Rabbi Yehuda, b'shmira pchusa nami potter mitzada bodo shaboy. Even b'shmira pchusa, unlike Rabbi Meir, who's mechayiv, but the muad, the full payment, you're not going to pay even with shmira pchusa. It says v'lo yishmerenu. But still, on the Tzad Tammuz, he agrees with Rabbi Meir that you have to pay for a Shmira Pechusa. You'll still have to pay. But for the Muad, he disagrees. He says that you're not going to pay even if it was a Shmira Pechusa. You're also chayiv by Mula. V'aloche ke Rabbi Yehuda. The loch is like Rabbi Yehuda that for tam you'll be chayiv with a shmira pechusa, but not for a muad. Mitzvah lishchot sheira muad ke l'salika hezek. To begin with, the mitzvah is shech sheira muad. That way you'll remove the damage and we won't have any issues. Okay, this brings us to the conclusion of Perek Dalet, and we have to take a break for